Stop everything and listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is not just about coins, it's about something much bigger, something most people completely ignore every single day. Right now, somewhere in the United States, millions of pennies are moving from hand to hand to hand. People are spending them without thinking, without checking, without realizing that some of those coins could be worth far more than their face value. And here's where things start to get serious. There is an ongoing discussion, a real conversation happening right now about something that could change everything. The possibility of the penny being discontinued. Yes, you heard that right. If the penny stops being produced, then every coin that already exists becomes part of a limited supply. And when something becomes limited, its importance changes, its perception changes, and sometimes its value explodes. So today, we are not just looking at coins, we are uncovering a hidden layer, a silent story behind three specific pennies: 1979, 1983, and 1992. Coins that look ordinary, but may not be as ordinary as they seem. Before we even look at the first coin, there is something you need to understand. Something most people never think about. A penny is supposed to be the smallest unit of money, something almost meaningless, something people don't even bother picking up sometimes. But what if I told you that making that tiny coin actually costs more than the coin itself is worth? Think about that for a second. The government spends more to create a penny than the penny's actual value, which means every time a new penny is made, there is a loss. And when a system operates at a loss for long enough, change becomes inevitable. That is exactly why experts, economists, and policymakers have started asking a serious question. Does the penny still have a future? And if the answer turns out to be no, then everything changes. Because when production stops, new coins stop entering circulation. And suddenly, the coins already out there become all that remains. And that's where collectors step in. Let's begin with the first coin, the 1979 Lincoln penny. At first glance, it doesn't look like anything special. It's small. It's worn. It carries marks from years of use, and to most people, it's just another old coin. But here's the part most people miss. This coin has lived a life. It has passed through countless hands, been part of daily transactions, seen moments that no one remembers anymore. Back in 1979, coins like this were everywhere. Used in shops, in buses, in everyday life. No one saved them, no one protected them, because no one believed they would ever matter. And that is exactly why most of them are gone today. Lost, damaged, destroyed over time. But a few survived. And when something survives while others disappear, it starts to become important. Now here's where things start to change. Because not all coins are equal. Some coins carry something extra, something unusual, something that shouldn't be there. These are called mint errors. And errors change everything. A slight misalignment, a double strike, a small detail that looks different. These are the things collectors search for. Because an error turns a common coin into something rare. And rarity is where value begins. Collectors don't just collect coins, they chase stories. They chase rarity. They chase the feeling of finding something that others missed. And when fewer coins remain and more people start searching, the pressure builds. Demand rises. And when demand rises, prices follow. Now imagine if the penny is discontinued, what happens next? No new coins, only old ones. And suddenly, even coins like the 1979 penny start getting attention. And yet, despite all of this, people are still spending these coins every single day. Without checking, without thinking, without realizing what they might be holding. And that brings us to the next coin. A coin that is not just old, but part of a major change, a turning point in coin history. A coin that should make you look twice before you ever spend it.
And now, we move to the second coin. But this is not just another coin. This is where the story begins to change. This is where things become more serious, more rare, and far more valuable than most people could ever imagine. The 1983 Lincoln penny. At first glance, this coin looks completely ordinary. Same size, same color, same design. Nothing about it stands out. No shine, no special detail, just another penny. The kind people don't even bother to look at. But here's the truth. This coin is hiding something. Something that most people never even think about. To understand this coin, we need to go back to a very important moment in time. Before 1983, most pennies were made from copper, solid, heavy, and valuable as metal itself. But over time, something started to happen. The price of copper began to rise, and slowly it became more expensive to produce a penny than the penny was actually worth. Think about that. The government was losing money every time a coin was made. And when that happens, change becomes unavoidable. So in 1983, a decision was made, a major shift in how pennies were created. Instead of solid copper, they introduced a new system, zinc core with a thin copper coating, which means on the outside it still looks the same, but inside it's completely different, lighter, cheaper, and faster to produce. And for most people, that change meant nothing, because the coin looked exactly the same. But here's where the story becomes powerful. Whenever a major change happens, there is always a moment of imperfection. Machines are adjusted, systems are updated, processes are tested, and during that transition, mistakes happen. Small mistakes that most people would never notice. But those mistakes are exactly what collectors look for. Because sometimes, during that shift, a few coins are created the old way, even when the system has already changed. And that brings us to one of the most important discoveries in modern coin collecting. Some 1983 pennies were accidentally made using copper, even though they were supposed to be zinc. Yes, coins that should not exist were created. And that alone changes everything. Because when something exists that was never supposed to exist, it becomes rare. And when it becomes rare, it becomes valuable. Now think about this. Millions of pennies were produced that year, but only a tiny number were made incorrectly. And those few coins are now being searched for by collectors all around the world. Because they are not just coins, they are errors. They are history. They are proof that something went wrong inside a system that was supposed to be perfect. And when a coin like that appears in the collector market, it doesn't go unnoticed. Serious collectors step in, bidding begins, and the price starts to climb. Hundreds, then thousands of dollars for a single coin that most people would never look at twice. So now the question becomes, what if you have one? What if, right now, in your pocket, or in a jar, or hidden somewhere in your home, there is a coin that looks ordinary, but is actually extraordinary?
Here's a simple way to start. Weight. A zinc penny feels lighter. A copper penny feels heavier. That small difference could be everything. But here is the mistake that destroys value again and again. People clean their coins. They think a shiny coin is more valuable. But the truth is, cleaning removes originality. And once originality is gone, the value disappears with it. That natural surface, that aged look, that is what proves the coin is real, untouched, and authentic. Now connect this to the bigger picture. If the penny is discontinued, what happens next? No new coins, only old ones. And coins like this, especially rare ones, become even harder to find, which means demand increases, and when demand increases, value follows. So a coin that is already rare could become even more powerful in the future. And the most shocking part of all is this. These coins are not locked away. They're not hidden in museums. They're not protected. They are still out there, moving from hand to hand, from pocket to pocket, being spent like they are worth nothing, when in reality, they could be worth so much more. And now, we move to the final coin, the one that depends on a detail so small that most people never even notice it. But that tiny detail can change everything.
And now, we arrive at the final coin in this story. A coin that most people have seen, most people have held, and most people have completely ignored. A coin that does not look rare, a coin that does not feel special, a coin that does not demand attention. And yet, this coin hides something so small, so subtle, that it has the power to change everything. This is the 1992 Lincoln penny. At first glance, there is nothing unusual here. The familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, calm, steady, unchanged for generations. The familiar reverse design, 1 cent, United States of America. A design seen by millions, handled by millions, forgotten by millions. There is no dramatic difference, no obvious mistake, no loud signal that something is wrong. And that is exactly the point. Because the most valuable discoveries are not always obvious. Sometimes they hide in plain sight. Now, look closer. Not at the whole coin, not at the color, not at the wear, but at one specific word, America. This is where the story changes. This is where attention becomes everything. Because in most coins, the letters A and M have space between them, a small gap, a normal separation. This is what collectors call wide AM. And wide AM is common. It is expected. It is ordinary. But in rare cases, something different appears. Something subtle, something easy to miss, something that requires a second look. In these rare coins, the A and the M are not separated in the usual way. They are closer, much closer, almost touching. Sometimes so close that the difference can only be seen if you are truly paying attention. This is known as close AM. And this is where everything changes. Because that tiny difference, that almost invisible detail, creates a completely different category of coin. A coin that most people would never notice suddenly becomes something collectors actively search for. Something discussed, something compared, something chased. Now think about the scale of this. Millions of coins produced, millions of coins circulating, millions of coins being spent every single day. And within that ocean of ordinary coins, a very small number carry this tiny difference. That is what creates rarity. Not the obvious, not the dramatic, but the subtle, the overlooked, the easily missed. And here is the most shocking part. Even today, even with all the information available, even with collectors talking about it, even with videos and guides and explanations,
These coins are still being missed, still being spent, still being ignored. Someone picks up a coin, looks at the date, sees 1992, and moves on. No second look, no closer inspection, no attention to the letters, no awareness of what might be hiding right there in plain sight. That is how rare coins disappear. Not in dramatic ways, not in headlines, but quietly, in normal moments, in everyday transactions, in decisions made without awareness. Now imagine this: a coin sitting in a jar, mixed with dozens of others. Years of loose change collected, never sorted, never examined. Inside that jar, there could be a 1992 penny, and on that penny, there could be a detail that changes everything. But if no one looks closely, if no one takes the time, if no one knows what to look for, then that coin remains hidden. It remains silent. It remains just another piece of change. This is why knowledge matters. This is why attention matters, because the difference between a normal coin and a rare coin is not always obvious. Sometimes it is measured in millimeters, in spacing, in alignment, in details that only reveal themselves to the person willing to slow down and truly look. Now connect this to the bigger picture, the future of the penny, because this is where the story becomes even more powerful. If the penny is ever discontinued, then every existing coin becomes part of a closed system. No new coins, no new supply, only what already exists. And when that happens, attention shifts. People begin to look back. They begin to search. They begin to ask questions. They begin to examine what they once ignored. And coins like the 1992 Close AM move from being a hidden curiosity to something far more visible. Something discussed, something pursued, something recognized. Now, it's not just a coin with a small difference. It's a coin from a closed era, a coin with a known variation, a coin tied to a specific detail that separates it from the rest. And that combination is powerful. It creates demand. It creates competition. It creates moments where collectors step in and decide that they want that coin more than someone else does. That is where value lives, not just in the coin, but in the desire for the coin. Now step back and look at everything we've uncovered. 1979, a coin from a time of heavy circulation, where survival itself creates interest. 1983, a coin from a period of transition, where change creates possibility. 1992, a coin defined by a tiny detail, where attention creates discovery. 3 coins, 3 stories, 3 different reasons to stop and look closer. And yet, despite everything, people are still spending them, still ignoring them, still treating them as if they are worth nothing more than 1 cent. That is the reality, and that is the opportunity. Because the moment you become aware, the moment you start paying attention, you separate yourself from the majority. You become the person who checks, the person who notices, the person who does not rush, the person who understands that value is not always obvious. And sometimes that awareness is enough to turn something ordinary into something unforgettable. So before you spend your coins, before you ignore that jar of change, before you dismiss that small piece of metal, stop, look again, check the date, check the details, check the spacing. Because somewhere in your hands, in your home, in your everyday life, there might be a coin waiting quietly to become your next discovery. And remember this, the biggest treasures are not always found, they are noticed. This is USA Coin Craze, and we uncover the hidden value hiding in plain sight.